Okay, I got 7:01. I'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. Start off with any public participation. Not seeing any yet. No. Seeing none, relatively consistent there. We do have one set of meeting minutes to review. So the meeting minutes for January 13th, 2022 should have been within the link that I sent. Did everybody see them, have a chance to look at them, have any comments? All right. So I appreciate Steve more and more. I had to do the minutes, which I don't mind doing. I don't think Steve should have to do them either, but so I was able to cobble together the minutes, which was good. And Kevin did a nice job keeping things in order, so it wasn't too difficult.
I'll move to accept.
Motion to accept by Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Dan. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of accepting the minutes, January 13th, the Finance Committee? Anybody against? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, so the agenda spoke about Town Hall Subcommittee. So did the Town Hall Subcommittee review these budgets as well, Steve? I wasn't sure.
Yes, they did. I know that Evan's running a couple minutes late.
Yep.
But Evan, Zach, Dawn, and I met, and Kevin. Oh, no, Kevin didn't meet on this one. Kevin was away on this one, and they did review them.
Just check and see if they had any comments that they wanted to bring up at this point.
No, it was pretty uneventful. The budgets look pretty good, in line with what we're expecting. So
Okay.
no concerns.
Very good, thank you. I will then defer to Kevin, I think, or you, Steve, who's going to help review them?
I'll just say a few words in the beginning. First of
Yep.
all, I want to welcome Edward. Haven't met you, Edward. Look forward to it at some point when you get a chance.
Call me Ed, not Edward.
Ed, okay, please come in and say hello. We can chat. Welcome aboard. Got a chance to meet Zach at the subcommittee meeting. So all pretty good, pretty uneventful. We did get some very interesting news, which I did kind of send out to everybody. The House One budget, or the governor's budget, increased our Chapter 70 by about $1 million. I think net state aid over last year, a little bit over 800,000, which is really much better than we've been anticipating over the last few years. So I think you can, both Dan and I were low on that, and that's okay. We're happy to be low on that, right, Dan?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I had us about $700,000 less than that.
Yeah. And I think I must have looked at that cherry sheet 5 times because I figured I must be looking at it wrong, kept figuring it was going to change. But that's good. So that does help. And although I don't think that should change anything that we do, it does kind of help and take the edge off on that side. And it's been a long time coming. We've been whining about our Chapter 70 allocation for 100 years now. So it was really a very pleasant thing to see.
So it wasn't $1 million for everybody across the board. So we got.
No, interestingly enough, I did check some of our neighbors, some of which who I've railed about in the past, that get way more per student than we do, even though I feel they're demographically similar. And our neighbor to the northwest appeared to get the minimum per student. That would be Reading. Melrose did great and got $1 million as well. Stoneham got $500,000, which I'm happy for. And Kevin's old stomping ground, Saugus, had a whopping. Kevin's shaking his head. A whopping. How much was it, Kevin? $3 million extra.
Over 3 million, yeah.
Over 3 million. So, but that's okay. I'm happy with our $1 million.
That's good. So I'll probably forward that out after the meeting. Steve, you good with that, right?
Yeah, I did. I think I did send it to everybody.
Everybody
I sent
got
the
it.
cherry
Okay,
sheet to
I
everybody already, yeah.
didn't recall in the email. Got it. Yep. Thanks. Good news is right.
Yep. It was nice to see.
All right, Dan, I'm sure we'll bake that into the forecast and then we'll see how things play out as we go forward, right? Well, we
Yeah.
got a couple of cycles to go yet, but
Right, yeah. So what I've done is put that new number in the forecast, assuming it's going to pass. And I've updated the forecast with all the small budgets, those we're going to get tonight and those we had 2 weeks ago. And obviously with a higher number from the state, our numbers looking forward have improved.
great.
Yeah, a couple of key things. I think we'll know first or second week in February, the GIC increase, which I think will be in line of what we were thinking about. Some other large budgets will be coming in. Now we're getting into the large budgets, right? We're going to get police, fire, DPW coming forward. So,
Right.
Not to mention schools, but we seem to be pretty much on track. So I'm pleased.
All right. I can share my screen and if you're done, Steve, and go through budgets,
Yep.
if that
I made you the co-host, so you can do that.
makes sense. I can find what to share. That would be good. Try this. I think that's it.
Jim, if possible, can we start with budget 28, the veterans budget?
Sure.
We have the district director on the Zoom call tonight.
Oh, good. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, Karen Burke, she's the department head for this budget.
Okay, bear with me. Let's see this. Let me move that. It's sorry, I'm trying to move this header so I can see the rest of my items. That's better. You said the veterans, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No problem. All set, Jim?
I think so. You guys can see the veterans budget up? Yep.
Veterans budget number 28, where we're requesting an increase to this budget of $3,619 over the current year. There's an increase in personal services, $1,978, which is contractual and negotiated increase. Under contractual services, there's an increase of $1,632. That's all in the professional services line item. And that's to cover the cost of the salary increase as part of the municipal agreement between Melrose, Wakefield, and Saugus. Main expenses within this budget is the under contractual services, the professional services line item, $55,067. That's the cost to be Wakefield's cost to be a member of the district. We share the veterans director and a dedicated VSO for the town of Wakefield. We also have a recipient line item, $170,000, which is used for veterans benefits. We do get reimbursed up to 75% from the state for costs associated out of this line item. One of the questions that came up at the subcommittee meeting was the numbers expended has been down both year to date this year, and we spent $80,000, $80,042 last year. We think it has partly to do with COVID. I did a 6-year average, fiscal 15 through fiscal 20. It was about $145,000 was the 6-year average spend. Coming up in this July, there is going to be a COLA that's going to be added to the veterans benefit, probably a little bit under 6%. It's going to be somewhere between 5.6 and 5.9%, we believe. There's also been some asset increase in the asset limitations for people to be eligible. So it's easier for people to become eligible. I talked to Karen, who's on the line tonight, that there'll be more outreach and also advertising in the newspapers to try to get our numbers back up to where they have been historically. We were looking to level fund the recipient line item at 170,000, and then, you know, see where it goes this year. And if numbers don't start propping up again, we'll probably look to reduce that a little bit in the future years. Total budget request for fiscal 23 is $253,220.
Good. Evan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So, Kevin, so we, you know, Teray had asked for the analysis in the subcommittee. It sounds like you did some sort of exercise there, relevant to like a 5 or 6 year look back.
Right.
If the average is 145, that's great, but I'm more interested in the trend line. Like, I don't think the trend line on veterans benefits is caused by COVID. It was declining almost in a straight line several years before COVID. And so I think we have a lot of room here. And this was a discussion in the subcommittee meeting. I do think we have a lot of room here where we're like, we can trim this. I mean, you know, and good. If is it Karen? I'm so sorry. Is Karen the VSO?
Yeah. Karen is here. Yes.
Karen. So if Karen's doing some outreach, that's great to figure out who, you know, or figure out a way to make sure every veteran who's eligible has access to the benefits and is aware. That's great. We want to make sure that happens, but I don't see us coming anywhere close to 170 grand. I mean, this year, I don't know why we have to wait until next year is sort of my argument on this. And, you know, we're not going to trim it close, but even if we did, it's not like our veterans aren't going to get paid. Like, we will balance it with a transfer. I just think this is extremely padded. And I think we need to take a closer look. Like, I'm less interested, Kevin, in the average and more interested in the trend line, right?
Sure.
The average doesn't mean much to me if it's just declining.
All right, I don't know, Ed, do you have something to add to sort of this discussion so far? Or do you have a different question?
I have just a question. What is the current caseload? Can the director tell us that?
Currently, we have 11 recipients. We've just brought 2 new ones on. We've had, I looked from last year, we've gone down from about 16 or 17. It does tend to ebb and flow. We'll have somebody who gets put on VA federal benefits, and that puts them over the income limit for the, so it's a good thing, right? We switch them when we get them some federal money, so they don't need the state money anymore. And we've had some veterans pass away. We've had some move to assisted living, some move to other towns. So we've had more going out than coming in. So we are trying to reach out to make sure we're not missing anybody who just doesn't realize the benefit is there, that haven't, you know, people haven't been out as much, especially the main people that we see with this are people living on their Social Security. So we haven't seen those people quite as much, with less activity at the senior center, for example. So we want to really reach out to make sure we're capturing those people.
Excuse me, somebody's not muted and there's background noise, either people or television or something, if
I
you're not
think it's
speaking.
Brian is showing up. Sorry, Brian.
Sorry. Karen, were you done speaking? I wasn't trying to interrupt, but I did lose the last part of what you said, so.
No, so our numbers are down, and we really want to make sure we're not missing anybody, because I think that we are missing some people. If I look at the average of Saugus and Melrose, for example, in Melrose, I have 30 recipients, and in Saugus, we have 27. So I do want to make sure we're not missing anybody in Wakefield that would be eligible for benefits. We need to get out there more to try and capture some of those folks. But we're down to only 11 people right now, which is low.
I just want to make the point, I don't think this is unique to Wakefield. I see a noticeable decline in my own city, Somerville, a dramatic drop in the cherry sheet reimbursement. And we're attributing that to both the pandemic and the fact that the number of veterans have passed away, lower caseload. So I don't think this is unique to Wakefield.
Okay, I'll come back to Evan in a minute. Brian?
So what's the downside of budgeting for this in a way that's going to make sure that we can take care of whoever comes along, and then at the end of the year it turns out we don't spend all that money? To Evan's point, like, what are the pros and cons of either realigning this budget so it's a smaller amount now based on, you know, what we've seen, versus leave it in there, and if people show up and they need the money, it's there. We don't have to do a reverse, reserve fund transfer or anything. I'm just curious what the pros and cons of each approach are. And I'll go on mute now.
Thank you. Dennis, you got a question? And then Evan, I'm coming back to you.
Yeah, it's on the cherry sheet that you just sent us. It shows the veterans benefits going down by 30,000 from 88,000 last year to 58,000 this year. Is that based on these 11 as a reimbursement? How does that veterans number come up with on the cherry sheet?
That's a lag. So that's based on last year's figures.
Yeah, but it shows it going down.
It shows a
It is
trend.
going-
down. Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Evan?
Just to address Brian's question, I mean, if we're not worried about the cons of over budgeting and over appropriating, it's like, what are we doing here, right? Like part of the process here is like, this is vastly over budgeted, and I'm very confident about that. And if we want to test it at the end of the year, we can do that. But the pro is you get to knock off, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80 grand from the appropriation, and either free it up to use somewhere else, or God forbid we add it to excess levy capacity, which is, my preference. But I just like, this is like vastly over appropriated, so to speak. And I think we don't have to wait until next year to trim it down. If you want to do a two-part process where it's like, okay, this year if we think we have, I don't know, 70 grand of buffer here, right? Well, then let's take off 35 this year and 35 next year. Fine. I don't see why we can't do it all now, but to me, it's like there's definitely benefits in making sure we don't sort of over buffer a line item, whether it's here or anywhere in the budget.
Good. I tend to agree with Evan's mindset and approach to that. I think if we know, from a trend that year over year or year over 3 years, it's unchanged, then that is part of sort of what we want to ask, Stephen and Kevin to be looking at for us. So I tend to agree with that. And Dan, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm also in Evan's camp on this one. I've pushed on a couple occasions where we've got something that's a little over budgeted. And I think this is one of those, and I can see us recommending something less than 170,000. Whether it's 35 or if it's 50, something, because I'm looking at what we actually spent. In 2020, it's down to 130,000, 21 is 80,000. So, maybe getting down to 130 versus 170 might be the right answer for now. But it's clear that the trends are going the other direction. And just like we increase budgets like snow and ice when things are trending and, upward, I think we need to trend downward. So count me in on that.
All right, Bill.
Yeah, I'm wondering, was this discussed or brought up at all, with the town council?
Town council had no questions, no comments.
That's kind of what I thought. It's what I think I read in the papers, all these breezed right by town council. So I don't know, Evan, did you bring it up at that meeting?
I did, Bill. I mentioned it in my sort of opening remarks. Councilor Santos had something to say about it. She, you know, I think her position was, and I don't want to misquote her, but her position was, I hear you, but let's wait. And I understand that, but also I don't see the need to wait. Like, why wait? Like the trend line, I haven't seen the report from Kevin yet, but the trend line looks pretty steep. And I think we can trim this down pretty good. 130, fine, if that's where we want to go, Dan. But you know, I bet there's more room than that, but fine. I just don't understand why we have to wait and like clearly take more for this line item than we need. Because you know, we can, at the end of the year, we can over budget everything, and then at the end of the year celebrate all this free cash. And I, like, to me, that's not really what budgeting is about. Let's get to a reasonable buffer, not one that's over the top. And this one, I think, is right now.
I'm not sure anybody's advocating for that, but.
Well, I understand, Brian, but that's what I'm looking at these numbers, right? It's like we're way over budgeting this, and I don't think we have to wait a year to figure that out.
Dan, back up again.
Yeah, I was going to answer Brian's question regarding if we over budget, then have a big, thousands of dollars go back into the general revenue versus reserve fund transfer. My mindset is that we ought to, try to budget the way it ought to be. But in terms of answering that question, is if we have, I think we have 400,000 right now is lined up for our reserve fund transfer. If we run short on that, it becomes a problem. So if we cut this too much, we get down to say 100,000 and we end up spending 130, that's 30,000 that has to come out of the reserve fund transfer portion. So I'm just mindful of the fact that, yeah, we can reduce it, but we just have to be mindful that our reserve fund transfer is not unlimited. So that's the give and take on why one way versus the other might be more advantageous.
A haircut is okay, but we don't want to cut too much off.
Right.
Kind of like shaving a beard. Doug. Sorry, Dennis.
Yes, why can't we just take enough off to pay for the building department's increase to add that full-time person? That way we're rolling it in the same executive department, but we're funding an increase in another line, another budget without having to really worry about an increase for money that we're going to give back at the end of the year. Let's take it now and use it to fund that line item.
All right, thank you, Doug. Butler.
The question I have is, now that we're down to, and granted, we want to see, we want to make sure we're servicing the community. I'm not sure if we always had 2 part-time staff there, but that's the other question. If we're down to 11 recipients and we continue to trend lower, do we need not the extra help? At what level would you reduce that?
Doug, on that there, we have one person that is a town of Wakefield employee that's a part-time clerical worker in the Veterans Department.
Okay.
And then there's a municipal agreement between Melrose, Saugus, and Wakefield. We share Karen Burke, so we split Karen Burke's salary amongst the 3 communities. And then there's a dedicated veteran service officer for Wakefield that I believe he's part-time, Karen.
He is. He's 18 hours, and there's a lot more to the VSO role than just executing the Chapter 115 benefits. And we assist with VA benefits, which bring in dollars to the community through widows benefits, pension benefits, disability benefits. So it's actually a very busy job. The Chapter 115 is only a small part of it.
And the same with the veterans assistant?
Yes, so she's the full-time presence there helping with veterans, but she's the part-time hours. It's in addition to her. She's part-time hours for the veterans and then part with the senior center as well.
Okay.
But it's the part-time, I assist with Wakefield things as well. So it's a busy job, and it's part of the district. Part of the district helps us to meet the state requirements for VSOs, because technically speaking, any community over 12,000 people is required to have a full-time VSO or be a part of a district to meet that requirement.
Very good. And Karen, you get the brunt of a typical discussion for this group. It's not your budget by any means. It's just a healthy discussion that we have routinely, just so you know. Bill Boudreau, your hand up?
Well, yeah, maybe I'll stand down because frankly, I appreciate the discussion and I wanted to ask Karen and Steve what they think about the discussion, having heard from a lot of people on the committee. So I see Steve had his hand raised, so.
Very good. Yep, Steve.
I was going to make the point that Karen just made that, we did get actually cited by the state Bureau of Veterans Affairs for not having adequate veteran services, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And we entered into this agreement. So this has served us well. So I don't think that we're overstaffed over there at all. And we've done it with part-time and really had a look at making sure we don't spend too much when you add benefits and everything else. Only thing that a couple of points. If the finance committee were to recommend a reduction in this budget, I would like to go back to the town council with it, because I'd like us to be on the same page at town meeting. I think that would be that was a very difficult discussion when people think you are reducing veterans' benefits. So that's something I think we should come to some sort of consensus on before, if we go forward. I'd hate to have that discussion. We had that a few years ago when we did reduce the this line item because we were over. So we had that before. Number one. Number two, to get to the point that if we were to go too low, we would really have 3 bites at the apple in fixing that. If we saw a trend, we could fix it in November. If we saw a trend, we could fix it in April, and we also would have the reserve fund. And I will say that over the years, the finance, we have never left a veteran out in the cold. We have covered everything. We've got reserve fund transfers. That's never been an issue. And that's not what this discussion is about. To talk about the trend line, it was 156,000 in fiscal year 15. Fiscal year 20 was 130. If the in veterans recipient expenses. I would suggest that if the finance committee is going to recommend a reduction here, that we take we don't do it all in one year. We kind of go down a little bit to ease into it. Just my 2 cents, but that's up to the committee. And Karen does a great job, and I'm sure she doesn't take it. She's a tough Navy woman. She doesn't. This is not going to bother her, right, Karen?
No, not at all. I appreciate the conversation. I weigh that every time when I look at the budget with where we are and the right thing to do. I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So mechanics on that, Steve, if we would agree to a number, is that something we need to motion and vote on, or is it a recommendation you could bring back to
If you
town
made a
council?
recommendation to me, I could bring that back. I think that'd be better.
Very good. I still have a few hands. Evan?
You remove mine.
Yeah, just, this might be a larger conversation, Steve, but to the notion that we need to go back to the town council if we're going to reduce it. My reflexive reaction is kind of like, well, why did they vote on it before they got our recommendation? Like, I think that might be a process.
That's the way the charter works. You recommend on the town council's budget. That's the way it goes. It's
Yeah, all right then, fine. So whatever we need to do there then is fine. And to Steve's point that we've never left a veteran in the cold, we can't. I mean, we have to pay these benefits. If we end up running over, they're going to get their money. It's not a question of whether we're going to pay veterans benefits. I just don't want to over appropriate. So that's all I think.
Great. Teray?
I'd take myself off of mute. The only point I just wanted to add, I agree with Steve Mayo's recommendation that if there was going to be an adjustment to this line item, that we do it over time. Because these are services to veterans, and I get that it's trending in this direction. I'm the one who asked for a further look back at our subcommittee meeting. I just don't like the idea of taking a significant cut all at once. I think, trends happen over time. So if we're going to make a budget adjustment, particularly for particularly for veteran services, we should consider making the adjustment over time. I'm not saying we need to wait 5 years and take off $5,000 per year, but I am not particularly comfortable with the idea of recommending, for example, like a $70,000 or $80,000 cut at this point. So I just wanted to share that with the committee.
Very good. Thanks. Doug, do you have another comment, Butler? Hello, can't hear you.
From the realistic standpoint of things, I mean, if we're gonna go in and recommend, let's even say it's either 25 or 50 or something like that. Like, we can recommend that it gets cut. This is the difference between appointed and elected. They're not gonna be. So, and then we'll get to a vote at the town meeting. It's not one we can do. So, I mean, I'd be all in favor of cutting it by some amounts, and maybe it's probably not 5,000, it's probably more 25, not even 50, but I just don't think that's likely to survive a vote on the town council.
All right, so I see everybody's hand up again. Sorry, I just listening to the trend. We're gonna talk about in a minute a number between 130 and something. If 130 is the floor of the max cut, just putting it out there. We'll move the dialogue and move the number shortly. Stefan, your hand's up the first time. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention too that I know the town has done some metrics on new units that are being added to the community. And I know we have quite a number of new units that are coming online over the short term. And I think some of the metrics that were put together were, for every unit of house, there's X number of kids that are added to the school system. Just curious also if there's been this type of analysis with regards to veterans.
Obviously, I defer to Steve. What he's saying is new buildings, new units. Has there been any?
I think it's a great question. I don't know of any, but maybe that's something we will look into.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if Karen knows of that.
Oh, I wish I did. I would love to also have some affordable veteran units dedicated, but that's a future dream.
Very good. Dennis Hogan again. I'm sorry, Stefan, you all set?
All set, thank you.
Yep. Dennis.
Yeah, my only thought was the 130 sounds good because that's just about will cover the building department's increase for their additional half person. So I think that's a worthwhile number to shoot at, and try and keep the overall budget for the town in a line through the selectmen's budget. Thank you.
Very good. Evan, then Bill.
All right, last time I promise, just a quick comment on Doug's position, which was, if we make a recommendation to trim this down, it's not going to survive a vote of town council or town meeting. Then it's like, well, like, what do we do anything for then? Because like, we don't have authority here. We don't get to make the decisions. We only make recommendations. And I don't think, I mean, we might as well all just adjourn if that's our concern. So, our job is to recommend the right thing financially. And if the town council or town meeting rejects it, that's out of our hands. But I just like, we still got to do the right thing. We don't want to just give up because we think we're going to lose it. That's all.
Very good. Bill, final comment maybe?
Yeah, it is a final comment. I mean,
not for you, for everybody.
Yeah, for me, for sure. If we find that this in particular is somehow unduly controversial, it could be, although I think if we said something about a fire department or police department, they could all be equally controversial. But if, we could get some assurances that next year this would be looked at in a way that, coincides with the thinking a lot of people are putting forward here, I'd be in favor of letting it be. If we could just really say, next year we should really, it should be done in advance of coming to us, to Evan's point. And I agree with Evan's points here. What are we doing here if we're not talking about this stuff or making recommendations? But, there's motherhood and apple pie in a lot of what we do. And I don't want to, be part of something off the reservation that we appear callous or things like that. It just seems like some of the thoughts that are being brought together maybe should have been thought of before the budget was presented at all. And again, that's no criticism of anybody, just a thought.
No, and understood. And that's part of our process, the feedback Steve gets, Kevin gets, they get back to the department heads, that this is what our role is. So, all right. So I made a statement that, I think we ought to consider cutting it and going back, as Steve says, going back to the town council with our recommendation. Dan mentioned 130,000. I think it was 170. I don't have the sheet up again. So that's a $40,000 cut. Is that it, Steve? Dan, is that what?
Yeah.
That'd be 40, yeah.
Yeah.
$40,000 cut. Is anybody informally, this isn't a vote. Is everybody comfortable with that? If you're not comfortable, speak up, please. Assuming no speak up, Steve, I think the board would request that you bring back a change from the 170 to 130, see what they say. Give us feedback, either we can do a separate session or the subcommittee can get together with you prior to the next meeting if necessary.
Okay, perfect.
Can we also just make sure that the note says that this was all Evan's idea in case there's any blowback of any kind?
That's fine. That's fine. But also, Mr. Chairman, we do have a vote night coming up, right? Where we vote on each one of these budgets.
So at the end of the process, at the end of all of the view, we will have the opportunity to vote on each individual budget as it's presented to us. If it comes back different from town council or whatever. Correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I would just say we incorporate that into the recommendation motion at that point.
Right. And again, okay. And again, what the desire is to try to have the book show that us and town council are in sync with, to Steve's point a little earlier, just from a perspective of town meeting for anyway. Sorry, did Don have a hand up? Or are you good?
Yeah, that was the point I was just going to make. So we can go back to the town council, and if they decide not to cut it, then we have an opportunity to be in sync with them prior to town meeting. So
Either in sync or not in sync based on a recommendation.
Correct.
At the end of the cycle. All right, Karen, I hope you found that riveting and entertaining, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank
Ken.
you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay. Where was I? Kevin, are you there? You want to go to Treasury?
Yep, treasurer's budget, budget number 4. We're recommending that this budget be increased $7,284. This increase is all in personal services and is a contractual and negotiated item. The expense portion of the budget is level funded. Major expenses within this budget. There's a $13,000 line item for tax title, which is used for attorney's fees and lane court costs. And there's a $7,500 line item for bank charges. This is used for the cost to maintain the town's bank accounts and cost of checks. We do collect some revenue in this department. We collect tax title revenue. Year to date in fiscal 22, we've collected over 67,000. Last year, fiscal 21, over 88,000. And in fiscal 2000, almost $100,000. Total budget request for fiscal 23 is $233,917.
Any discussion? Doug Butler.
Yeah, I forget. Is the treasurer position a full-time position?
No, not
Half-time?
Yep.
Okay.
Very good. Anybody else? Last call. Thank you. Fire alarm.
Next one, budget, the fire alarm budget, we're recommending an increase of $3,185 over the current year. This department's been very busy due to the ongoing new development in town. They've been doing utility pole changeovers, fixing up and replacing aging traffic and dispatch equipment. They also maintain the town's traffic signals at the various intersections. And they also maintain master boxes, which are at private businesses. We do collect a fee for these master boxes, $225 a year. We collect approximately $30,000 a year in revenue. Total budget request for fiscal '23 is $66,700.
Comments?
And
Yep. Did somebody say something? Did Dan say something? No? Okay. Dennis? No?
yes, Dan, Dennis. Like the planning board, do they get money added for fire alarm extensions to something like Tarrant Lane or any of these other big projects to run new cabling to these for fire boxes and stuff? Do we get fees for that? Or does the town have to absorb that to run a box all the way up to Tarrant Lane, just to pick an example?
Some of the developments do supply the equipment or the supplies that are needed. So there is no cost for supplies. So they'll provide like new cable to be pulled.
Yeah, but shouldn't they pay a fee for it, for the individual bringing it up there? It's part-time guy. I mean, for them to have their own electrician run it all the way up, just because it's town land, it's a cheap way out to say, I'll buy you a $4,000 worth of a box, and you run 2 miles of cable for me. I mean, I think the planning board should look at these costs for fire alarm extension for these new developments.
Yeah, we'll bring that up to them in the Board of Appeals. I think in some cases they do get it, so we'll make sure.
Okay, thank
you. Yep.
Ryan, your hand up?
So I just found on our webpage that there actually is a list of all the Wakefield Box locations. I didn't realize that there was such a page, and there's a lot of them. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Do people need me to share the screen, or are they looking at the budget yourself? What's your preference? Just asking.
I look at it myself.
Yeah, I do it myself.
Same.
Thank you, because I can't see you all if I share the screen, and that's difficult for me.
I just wanted to mention, I think this is a recorded session, that it might be beneficial to actually share the screen.
Okay. Yep. All right, next budget. Emergency management.
Next budget is emergency management. We're requesting an increase to this budget of $13,415 over the current year. This increase is all in personal services and is for a negotiated salary increase, and is also an increase in the number of hours worked per week. This person is going from 18 hours a week to 23 hours per week. I'm sure you've seen Tom Walsh either on some of our Zoom calls. Tom's the emergency management director, and he's doing a great job for us, especially in the COVID situation we're in. Main expenses within this budget, under contractual services, there's a $100,000 line item for the Emergency Operations Center. That's at the Public Safety Building. We use this line item to service and upgrade and maintain the equipment there. And we also have a $16,000 line item for the notification system, which is the code red or the reverse 911 system. The total budget request is $88,851.
Comments?
Sorry, just really quickly, Kevin, you said the Emergency Operations Center was 100,000. I think it's
I'm sorry.
10,000.
It's 10,000.
Okay.
Yep.
Phew.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay. No other hands up, no other comments. Very good.
If I can just
Next.
add a great addition to our staff. Tom Walsh has done a fabulous job for us. Really, we're well blessed, particularly during the crisis and the contacts that he has in getting us supplies, whether it be from rubber gloves to masks to lighting for events to, all other things are going on too, like active shooter trainings, even during the COVID issues, we've done things like that. So really a great department.
Very good. Yeah, Tom's a great guy, well-trained, Malden Fire Department. He worked for a number of years with my father, many, many years.
There you go.
Brian, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it is a 31% rise in personal services budget. Is that like just there's more hours now? Is that the idea?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the dollar amount isn't ridiculous, but it's a large percentage rise.
And which is mainly due to the hours, going from 18 to 23. So 5 over 18 is about, what, 27% increase in hours, so seems to correspond.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. No other hands. Next.
Next budget is the Inspectional Services Department budget, or the Building Department. We're recommending an increase to this budget of $54,749. There's an increase in personal services, $53,749. This includes contractual and negotiated increases, and it also includes a new clerical position, a C6 position. The expense portion of this budget has increased $1,000. We talked about the need for a clerical position in this department based on the workload that this department has been seeing. This department collects quite a bit of revenue. They're one of the revenue cows for the town. In fiscal 2019, we collected almost $1 million in revenue. Fiscal 20, we collected over $1 million. Fiscal 21, almost 700,000. Year to date, almost 350,000. The number of permits that flow through this department, I believe in fiscal 21, the number was over 2,500. Total budget request is $438,778.
Very good. Comments? Anyone? Very good.
Sorry, this is Brian
sorry.
again.
Brian, go ahead.
So this is another one where we've got a 14% rise in personal services. As I read the numbers, do I have that right?
That's correct. Yeah, there's a new position, a new clerical position being added. There was one clerk currently in the office, and due to the current workload and anticipated workload for the various projects that we have on the horizon, it was deemed necessary to increase this position, increase this department by one position.
Got it. Thank you.
Evan.
Just a quick note, there was discussion about this in the subcommittee meeting and at the town council meeting. There were talks, and I'll let Steve speak to this, but there were talks about, okay, can we do this with a part-time position or 2 part-time positions instead of a full-timer that also, costs us in benefits, et cetera. But it's also worth noting that we might be anticipating a retirement in this department. And that this full-time position might allow sort of that individual's replacement to be in training in the meantime. There's no way for us to guarantee when a retirement will occur, as you all probably know. You don't force people into retirement, but we think that maybe it's coming soon. And so that that kind of put me over the top in terms of part-time versus full-time, because it makes sense to me if you want to have somebody there in training full-time.
I think you also need real continuity in that department. There's a real knowledge, learning curve there. Everything is zoning today. Everything is zoning. People coming in trying to get everything they can out of their property, because, you know, what did Will Rogers say about land? They're not making it anymore. So you got to use what you have. This is the busiest department right now for the staff level in town hall. So it really well needed here.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next.
Next budget is the recreation budget. We are requesting an increase over the current year of $2,917. This increase is all in personal services and is for contractual negotiated increases. The fees generated from the programs and activities is used to cover the cost of this salary. The expense portion of this budget is funded out of the recreation revolving account. Total budget request for fiscal '23 is $119,599.
Comments?
Does this budget end up being, does the revenue more than offset the expense?
The revenue that is generated covers the expense of a salary, that $119,599. And then the rest of the money that's in the revolving account is used to hire part-time instructors. So the fees go into the revolving account, pays for the instructors and the programs that are put on.
Ed.
Kevin answered my question. Thank you.
Very good. He's good that way. Dennis.
Are you including fees, the rent, et cetera, that the recreation department collects at the Maricale Civic Center? Is that paying his salary?
No, the programs and activities is his salary is appropriated. We pay for it out of the general fund. That cost is covered by fees that are generated by the programs and activities, which is then deposited into the general fund to cover that expense. The balance of the fees that are collected stay in the revolving account that are used to put on the programs and activities.
The Americal Civic Center rent is not part of what you just said.
Correct.
So his salary to run the Civic Center is for free to run the Civic Center.
That's part of his job, yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? Seeing none. Streetlights.
Streetlight budget, we're recommending level funding. 5 years ago, the light department, the MLD, obtained a state grant. They were able to replace all the town streetlights with LED lighting. That generated a $25,000 a year savings, which brought it from, I think it was like 213,000 down to the 188. The capital costs that the MLD absorbed will be paid off in 2026. And at that point in time, we'll be able to reduce this budget again by approximately $30,000. Total budget request is $188,131.
Very good. Comments, questions? Seeing none.
Next budget, Historical Commission, requesting level funding. Main expenses within this budget, $1,030 for printing. This is used to advertise meetings as necessary. There's also a line item, $500 for other materials and supplies, which is used for signage repair and upgrades. Total budget request is $2,000.
Joe Bertrand isn't here, but I would speak highly of the Historical Commission based on Joe's annual comments. Dan Sherman.
Yeah, so I'm just curious. I noticed that the spend, 21 was only $100 and 20 was 600. Is the reason for such a low spend because of the pandemic? I can look back to prior years, but I'm wondering if that's what's caused.
That I'm not positive. I know sometimes their expenses are towards the second half of the year. But I think overall, there is some decrease in activity due to the pandemic.
Yeah, because I'm saying in 21 is only $100 was actually spent. So it's pretty tiny. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next budget.
Next budget is the unemployment budget. We're requesting level funding. This budget is split into two line items, $25,000 for town unemployment, $50,000 for school unemployment. Total budget request is $75,000 for fiscal '23. We are in the process of reviewing the town's unemployment bills. There was quite a bit of fraud or over expenditures trying to be charged to the town. So that's why that number for year to date is low. But we anticipate some costs being charged for this year, but it should be under what's been appropriated.
Okay, thank you. I guess, Dan, you're up first. Dan, your hands down. Ed?
Just a question, where do claims flow in the town? Do you have an outside consultant that receives them, or do they flow to your office, Kevin? I'm just curious.
They flow to mine, and we do use UTMC
Okay.
to help us out, yeah.
Okay, good. And so the school portion is not budgeted on the school budget, it's budgeted on the town side, correct?
Correct.
Has it ever been an attempt to assign those costs to the school budget?
I think the school department has attempted a number of times to take that back. My comment has always been that I think that they would probably use that in other areas as school departments can do. So I thought this was.
I get you.
We've gone round and round that a few times, Ed.
Okay, thank you.
No, but I see that a new set of eyes. It's an interesting observation until you ask, you don't know.
But I will say that you know, the state, and I think if you read the story in the Globe the other day about the state trying to claw back payments that they made out ill-advisedly, let's say, that weren't fraud, but just payments they shouldn't have made. You know, they're looking for us to cover that. And even though our employees worked and weren't laid off at all, and then they'll pay us back when they get it back. So I'm not playing that game. We're gonna have a little bit of a battle there.
It's a real mess. It really is.
Yeah, horrible.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. Next budget, I think reserve.
Next budget is the reserve fund budget. We're requesting level funding for this budget. This budget is used for unforeseen, unbudgeted, or under budgeted expenses and emergencies. The total budget request is $400,000. I think really the only thing that we've looked, or the budgets we've looked at to date, the only one I'm thinking may be a problem or is a problem is the outside services for the legal department. We'll probably be looking for a reserve fund in the spring on that.
So Kevin, you're telling me that the fire department's not going to have a bunch of sick leave and vacation buybacks?
No, I said the budgets we've looked at to date.
To date, I heard that part.
We haven't seen them yet. And
Brian,
He was
Kevin, can
very
you,
cagey, wasn't he?
Kevin, can you expand on what that's about? What that, what you're concerned about?
what's that?
the legal,
Yeah, the legal that you just mentioned.
Oh, the legal budget, there's a line item in the legal budget, outside professional services. It is overexpended to date. At the beginning of this fiscal year, we did have a lawsuit that was settled. The town actually benefited, but to win that lawsuit, we had to hire expert witnesses that were expensive. And it probably cost us, I don't know, $70,000, $80,000. So we're going to be looking for a reserve fund transfer or a supplemental appropriation to cover that deficit.
Thank you.
very good. I think final budget.
Last budget is the professional medical budget.
I have a question on the reserve fund. if you
Sure,
don't-
sorry.
Sorry. So to just what we were discussing with the veterans budget, I see we've only spent the last couple of years 100 and change. I'm not looking to decrease the budget, but I'm just looking for why. I know we increased it from 300 to 400, but again, the trend is we don't spend it. Is there any discussion about that?
I'll jump in, and then Dan Sherman's probably getting ready to jump in too. We do have a financial policy where we do want to keep a certain percentage of our budget as reserve. And that's something that's looked on very favorable by bond counsel. And it does give us that cushion because we don't know, right? We don't know. We hope we don't use it. We hope we budget well. In the past few years, we have actually done some supplemental budgets in the spring instead of going to the reserve fund. So maybe some of that could have gone to the reserve fund and it didn't, but we did it in the supplemental route. So I think it's a good cushion to have just in case, because we don't know. We have had years where we've been right up to here on it too. So.
Don't disagree. I just wanted to.
No. I know.
Educational purposes.
Actually, I think as a percentage of our budget, we may be even looking in the next few years to increase this as our budgets increase.
Dan.
Yeah, so I was just gonna, not echo what Steve said, but yeah, one of the policies is to make sure we have a certain portion as they call it a rainy day fund. It's an annual rainy day fund. And when we can run it through Springtown meeting, that's great. But if a boiler breaks June 1st, we could be screwed. And so, that's why we keep it up there. And that's why we have that policy. So it's great that we don't spend it or spend all of it, but it's there in case we do have that unforeseen tragedy.
Okay. I was looking at the policy, the financial policies where you were talking, but I won't put it up. I'll send that out to folks again, just to look at as well. The numbers and the whys. Very good. The last budget was the professional medical, I think. We
Yes.
covered that.
We're requesting level funding for this budget for fiscal '23. This budget is used for new hire physicals, but may include current employee physicals and testing. Some of the physicals, the pre-employment physicals, especially for police and fire, can be a little expensive. They're a little bit more extensive than the regular employee physicals. We also pay mandatory Department of Transportation physicals. for employees with CDL licenses out of this budget and return to work physicals if needed. Total budget request is $10,850, with $8,350 coming from the tax levy, $1,250 from the water, $1,250 from the sewer enterprise.
Thank you. Questions on that? Very good. I think that concludes the list. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Committee comments. Anyone? Bill?
Not so much a comment. I think in your notes, we had some open questions from the last meeting. Are we going to cover those? I'm not trying to jump ahead if that was
Yep.
your
Yep.
intention.
Yep. No, that's fine. In the minutes, Steve, you want to speak on a couple of those items now, or you want to?
Sure. Let me pull those out here.
So on some of the committee questions was about the chargeback methodologies between departments for, in particular, Stefan can speak.
Particularly, and I think Stefan had questions particularly, I think it was relating to, as I remember, IT, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Yeah, we will be answering it when the IT budget is presented, if that's okay, Stefan.
Yep.
And we did speak with Todd, and he's aware of that. And I think when the IT subcommittee meets, that would be a great question to come up with, and I think that's imminent. Another question about IT was looking at cybersecurity and what have you, and that can be very easily done, and I can help, or Todd can help at the meeting, Brian. You can go into executive session for that issue, and then it's not recorded, or you can meet at town hall if you wish to, and we can do it and record the open session in the room. So I think that can be handled there. I think there was also a question. Oh, I don't want to move on if I didn't hit those.
Brian, were you going to say something?
It was actually. So I learned a lot about the open meeting law over the last several days. And my question is, so we can do executive session in the subcommittee and have that conversation about IT security and where the holes are, et cetera. But then when we report to the larger FinCom, I guess we just will leave those details out.
You could, or you could go into executive session for that purpose as well.
That would be a TUFA. I'm not sure we can do that.
I mean, you can certainly do that. We'd have to advertise and post that there will be executive session, and we certainly can do that.
Okay, so we'll make that determination after we have the subcommittee meeting. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'd say, Brian, just keep in mind that when you do have the meeting where you're planning an executive session, whether it's a subcommittee meeting or a finance committee meeting, you want to call to order an open session and then enter into executive session. I recall an instance in Wakefield, I won't name the board, but where went into executive session, then called the meeting to order, and that's a violation. So just make sure you call it into open session first.
Happily, you're on the subcommittee and you'll be able to help guide us through that process.
The other thing, Steve, was about consistency on elected department heads.
Okay.
Salary increases, I think, right?
Right. Yep. No, I'm happy to answer that. So most employees that we have, even those that are supervisory roles, are under a collective bargaining agreement. Department heads are a little bit different. On elected officials, we have traditionally followed the supervisors union. And whatever the supervisory union got for raises, they kind of, for at least the two positions that are very transactional, that are very on site every day and what have you. They follow supervisors union. So there are cases where, someone who has been in that position longer has already hit the last step, right? So they're just going to see a COLA increase, as would any of the supervisors. Someone who's maybe in the position a little shorter time, started lower, but is getting steps and tracks as any supervisor is. So that's why you might see, a percentage disparity as they catch up with each other. So I think we have one elected official that's at max because they've been there a while, one that's catching up. And I think that when that person was first elected, kind of started lower than the person they replaced. So that's kind of what happens there. And we have one elected official that has started way lower because it's not a full-time transactional type of position. However, I think in recent times, we're doing a lot more borrowing. There's a lot more bonding work. There's a lot more work with our rating agencies and what have you constantly. So there's a lot work done there, and that's all done very well. As far as managers are concerned that are maybe not under a contract, that don't follow and not linked to any union contract. And Kevin will tell you that they actually are reviewed by me. I appoint all of them. They're reviewed by me. And I think you'll recall a couple of years ago that one manager did not get a raise at all. And I was questioned on that by the FinCom. And my answer to FinCom was that it was a management decision. And that's why that person didn't get one. So, you know, I look at our staff, they do a lot, they do really well. And the managers normally are kept at the same level of the of what the unions are getting for COLAs. But unfortunately, managers don't get those steps and tracks. So if something really changed, you might see a salary adjustment there. But that's really how it happens. So that's why, although it seems inconsistent at times, it's really within a framework. So hopefully I answered the questions.
All right, we'll see. Doug Butler had his hand up first, I think.
He's
Doug,
muted.
can't hear you.
He's muted. Wonderfully.
Doug?
Get in there, get in there.
Yes.
Just on committee comments, just Jim and I met this morning, not as a sort of.
Excuse me, wait.
Oh.
Bill, did you have a comment about stuff Steve spoke about?
I have a question.
Oh, then never mind, I'm out until then.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you. Yep.
I'm not sure I heard you right or understand. Did you say elected positions have a ceiling of what they can get?
No, they follow the, we have always followed the supervisor's kind of contract. So I would say supervisors union, think of your other department heads, building inspector department head, you know, the departments at the DPW, those are all in the supervisors union.
Okay.
So they follow.
Some of those would have a ceiling then. They would have a.
Well, they would, yeah. I mean, they would have a cost of living increase.
I misunderstood. I thought you said elected, elected.
They follow that, yes. So they would follow that.
But an elected position doesn't have a ceiling.
Well, I mean, if we had a year where everyone took a 0, and we've done that before because of, then everyone would take a 0 if it was in their contract.
Yeah, no. I mean that they had reached. I mean, certainly it happens.
Oh yeah, they
work that they can't make any more money because of the salary.
No. They would still get a COLA, but they may be at the top track. So you're not going to get that step and track anymore.
Okay, but those are supervisor people, not elected officials. Okay, all right, I misunderstood.
Elected follow that, so they could be at the top track, but they would just get the COLA.
Okay. Thank you.
Just really quickly, essentially what you're saying, Steve, is that the ceiling for the elected official is really kind of tied to the ceiling for the supervisors that they track.
Exactly.
So it's an indirect ceiling, as it were.
Exactly. Yeah.
Committee comments. Doug.
Oh, sorry, guys. Jim and I met earlier today with the school committee's finance and facilities subcommittee. And we had all sat in on a meeting previously. And mainly this was around no details or anything, but really around getting a sense of budgetary timeline. So ideally, we're going to the full subcommittee is going to meet with them hopefully either February 17th, and then they're going to ideally come in here for a quick sort of preliminary take on both their outline and their maybe some discussion of budget, but nothing etched in stone until on the March 3rd. And then they'll come in for the full discussion and the one we'll vote on March 31st. Typically, that's been the way we've done it, I think, the last few years, where they've come in once early to give us a sense. But this, with school vacation being pushed far out, it's making it a little tough. So like, normally it happens earlier in February, and we sort of talked to them before they had presented, and before she had finished up her final book. But we're going to have discussions. We've had, we've heard from them a little bit so far, but there's nothing. I wouldn't say there's anything overly dramatic in the budget as we see it now, although they've got, their contractual stuff is all going to get them to, contractual stuff's going to get them 3% right now. And then and I think, I forget what Dan has in his projections, but we'll try and get it. We'll try and make sure they get close to that range.
So for the new folks, basically the school committee comes informally before their scheduled session to kind of give an overview of where they think they are and where they think they're going to be. Sometimes the school committee the schools have come in with much larger numbers than the overall town budget might have been expecting. So some number of years ago, we've worked towards this, come in twice so that we all get a chance to talk twice to each other before the second session. So that's basically what's going on there. So, Dan, did you have a question, a comment?
Yeah, I have a question for Doug, and I guess maybe a comment, but based on discussions a few months ago in the new contracts, in my forecast for the schools, I have them in at roughly a 4.9% increase, which is, obviously quite substantial. One of the bigger increases that I suspect we'll be looking at. So, Doug, I'm just wondering if you got any sense that if they might be going over 5% on their request, are they going to, the bogeys, we keep telling them is 4%. I'm assuming it's going to be close to 5%, but did you get any sense as to where they might come in?
Sure. I haven't yet, and I'm not Pete, so I'm not going to come to blows with you over the 4. But the 4 is, it would be ideal, but it's not likely to happen. And I know you've got to go in there. You've got to get 5 the next couple of years. My guess is that's where you're going to have to stay for probably the next 5.
They're still working through their, meeting with the principals and getting the wish list, Dan, that they haven't really vetted a lot of it out yet.
Yeah, it's all pushed back. It's delayed. Then it's been delayed, it feels like. So they're going to have to try and cram a bunch of stuff in. They just finished meeting with the whatever, aren't they? They're doing the last meeting with the principals. Does it mean next?
Yeah.
Okay. Final staff thing, some point in early March. So
yeah. So if they do come in at around 5%, I think we'll be okay. But I haven't seen obviously the fire, police, DPW yet.
Yep.
Yep. And they haven't done their contract yet, so that they're the all the unit Ds or unit whatever, the not all the other people other than the teachers. They haven't finalized that yet, so we'll see what ends up.
Doug, did you say they would be in on the March 17th informally?
No, that's not for this meeting. That's with the
oh, okay.
That's with the subcommittee.
Okay. On February 17th, the subcommittee is going to meet February 17th. Then the school will come in the first time on 3/3, and then again on the schedule 3/31.
For FinCom?
Yes. Right.
I think FinCom is 3/17 and 3/31.
I think we're 3/3 as well. I thought we had that. in Jim's initial thing. Are we
Yeah,
not?
I get the schedule for meetings, Steve, is that you're referring
Oh,
to, or,
3-3.
sorry?
Kevin, 3-3 as well? You're
We have
on
a 3-3 meeting with the, it shows fire, animal protection, general insurance.
Oh, 3-3. Okay, okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
317.
Yeah.
That's not an hour with them. That's like 20 minutes to a half
Yeah.
hour.
Okay. Okay.
Any other comments? I did just want to share real quick. It was on the list, on the link, but you know, this is the growing list that Steve or Kevin continue to add to. You know, 2 town council on 110, these budgets, 2 town council on 124, and then we're the same week. So total increases to date for all budgets, 4.28, correct, Steve?
Yep.
And again, it's just a good tool to take a look at. And every meeting, it'll continue to grow. So that was in the link. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Plus my agenda. I would entertain, oh, Bill, go ahead.
Just quick, Amy and Ed and I met with the chief and deputy chief of the police department today. So that's coming in about 6%, Dan. So, I mean, we had a good, you know, very good overview. The chief is always extraordinarily well prepared. The couple of years I've been involved with this, but so, and I believe that budget's coming in a couple of weeks. Our next session, right? So.
You
So we've
said police?
Police.
Yeah, I've got them at 3%, so, okay.
No. So we've had that meeting.
Yep. So February 17th is our next meeting, and
they're up for that, right? The 17th.
yep, police is the large budget at that meeting, and the library as well.
Yep. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, listen, Doug, sorry, your hands up.
Yeah, no, I don't know exactly where we find this and when we get it. When do we get what the expected tax levy is going to be? Or is that all decided on at the end of the process? Like in terms of, because to be fair, like, you know, the town assessments haven't changed dramatically, but the town property values have changed pretty dramatically. So just try, and the assessed values have changed pretty dramatically. So,
Steve, didn't you provide a budget?
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure of.
Steve, did you provide a? Sorry, go ahead, Steve. I think you want to speak.
I can certainly send out my crappy form. But you know, Dan has it too. So in that, it does have expected the forecast levy. And really all that we know at this point, Doug, is we know what last year's tax levy was, or the current year we're in. We can then do the calculation of 2.5% over that, assuming we go the full 2.5%. So we know that number. New growth is, we're questioning that. That's something we talk a lot about. And then that would become the new tax levy next year. So it is kind of hard where we don't know till we get the new growth number, what it's going to be, but we kind of guesstimate, and then we wrap it all up in November with the use of free cash if we need to. So I will give you what I think it's going to be and what Dan thinks it's going to be. And I think we're pretty much in lockstep or very close on that. We don't agree on receipts completely, but.
No, but I guess I'm wondering, like, the 2.5, is the 2.5 on the dollar value, or is the 2.5 a, like, rate per 100,000 increase?
The 2.5 is the entire tax levy dollar amount from the year before.
Oh, all right. So yeah, he's not.
Yeah.
We'd be taking down taxes per 100,000, but because.
Right. Your rate may go down. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, Doug, if you got a piece of paper, write down 86.1 million.
And I'd note, Mr. Mayo, that 2.5 plus new growth is the levy limit. It doesn't necessarily have to be our levy. Not that I have a bone to pick there, but I like me, I
Oh my
like,
God, our taxes are so low compared to where.
I like me some excess levy capacity where we can spare it, but that's just me.
Let's bring it on home.
I like excess levy capacity.
Ed,
I like leaving money in taxpayers' pockets when we can do it, but.
The
but
point
who-
is we won't know our new growth in this fiscal year until it's certified by the Department of Revenue, which is probably going to be in the fall. So it may just make sense to have conservative estimates on that. And then with a little bit of luck, maybe the actual new growth will exceed the estimates and you'll have excess levy capacity.
yep, and it's always a discussion about that conservative approach. How conservative is it? But, all right, good. Everybody else? Any other comments? You all right? Ed, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
I just had one comment. I sent this to Dan today. Dan, sorry about the Packers. Hope you're all right.
Yes.
Yeah, you would have to bring that up, wouldn't you? I have forgotten about it. I've actually tried to get past it. Everybody wants to talk about, oh, what do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to do? No, leave me alone.
Yeah. I
Aaron
would argue
Rodgers-
that was probably the best weekend of football in many, many years,
Oh, it's
regardless of whether you
outstanding.
like the team that won or lost. I would have
Yeah.
to say, incredible.
Great games.
Yes. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. Dan,
Second,
Dan motion, second by
5 people.
Brian. Brian. All right, all those in favor of motion to adjourn, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care, everybody.